No problem. Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fialka. Today's December 1, 2023. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with Gary Stockdale. Gary, where in the heck are you calling in from?
I'm in the Eagle Rock, Glendale area, a place called Adams Hill that is on the southeast part of Glendale and sort of on the edges of Glassell Park.
How cool is that? First question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
The best thing for a human being?
Yeah.
Honesty.
Oh my God, I never get that answer. That's a good answer. What's your favorite form of information? How it comes into you?
I'm thinking probably visual, although, I'm an audio guy, but I think I picture music as much as I hear it.
How cool is that? That's funny. I asked Frank Zappa once, what color is C? He says, I don't know. Ask Rimsky Korsakov. You music guys, you're tripping. Okay, so why do you think humans collect or gather information?
Well, I think when you gather more information, it does two things. Number one, it allows you to do more stuff. And two, it allows you to lord over other humans who don't know as much.
Lord over humans. I love that. Do you think this need or want to collect information is more innate or more invented?
Oh, I think it's innate.
Yeah.
I think it's like, when they sprouted legs and walked out of the water, it was because they wanted to go somewhere.
Do thoughts create emotions?
I think it works both ways.
Yeah. Fill in the blank. I don't know what I think until I
act upon it.
Good verb. McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it. Act upon it. Very good. Can humans think without language?
Of course.
Chomsky says that a language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. Gary, what do you do when language breaks down? When language doesn't work, what do you do?
Find other ways to communicate, I would imagine. Sign language, tapping someone on the shoulder, hugging them, crying.
Oh, I like these. That's really good. Yeah, one of my favorite answers ever. The guy goes, group hug.
There you go.
You said hugging, man. That is a healing force. Your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
We're feeling beings who try to think before we act upon those feelings.
Yeah. Bridget Bardot says, when I make love, I don't think. That's like, good luck. Like, how do you turn your brain off when you're doing, or like when people meditate, they go, now think about not thinking.
Well, that in itself is a Zen koan. So, it kind of breaks down your thinking when you try to think about it.
2 Alan Turing questions from the 50s. Is
one or zero?
That's like you answered the question before I asked it. I was supposed to interview, but the father of the internet, I forgot his name. Amazing guy.
Vinton Cerf.
How did you know that? You got
I've met Vinton Cerf.
I met him too. Did you know him well?
No, but he was doing a game show that my friend Jake Heath Van Straten was doing, which was kind of a to tell the truth thing, which it was live, and he was a guest on it. And he knows people that I know because I know a lot of people who are much, much smarter than me. And one of them is a person who works for Google, and they got him from Bell Labs, and he knows Vinton Cerf. And Vinton Cerf, I went to when I met him, he told me that Al Gore was absolutely correct. He was right there in the creation of the internet.
Yeah. Who's your friend's? What's his name?
Well, my
my
friend that works for Google is Rob Pike. He's retired now, but
Okay.
he was a specialist at Bell Labs in large scale data organization. And I met him through my friend Penn Gillette, Penn and Teller, who I worked with for many years, and they're dear friends of mine.
So here's the thing. I got to really reduce, but I met Vinton Cerf. He gave a talk. And I says, man, everything you said was McLuhan and Finnegan's Wake. And I says, do you know Joyce invented whatever's going to be after the internet and disguised it as a book? And his head spun around like Linda Blair in The Exorcist. He says, what? My wife reads about it. Blah, blah. And I says, hey, I want to interview you. And so he gave me his card, and I sent him in the invite. This was many years ago. And as I hit the send button on the cursor on my email, it felt like his email return already came back. Wow. So it was like a feeling like he invented the internet. He can see the email coming in before it actually comes in. And then I sort of blew it, and I didn't follow up, and I tried again. And anyways, but the Bell Labs thing, this is a good divert, and I'm for stories, anecdotes, tangents. That's all good. This guy told me a couple weeks ago that when Bell Labs was first kind of inventing coding, which is everybody and their mother is now a coder,
right?
That they went to musicians because they figured musicians could write code cool. And all the early code was cool because it was written by musicians. Now they don't have musicians writing code, and it sucks.
Well, it's I love everything about the internet and about the modern technology, but I also realize we're going to be in great trouble with it.
Well, now you're anticipating the two Alan Turing questions. The first one is thinking a function of the soul?
Well, the soul is a relative term. If I say the spirit of 76, am I talking about a spirit in the sky that's red, white, and blue, or am I talking about a feeling, an idea?
Yeah.
So is the soul something that actually exists, or is it just a feeling, an idea that we embody ourselves, or the spiritual side of ourselves in our minds, as if there's two different sides of us, because there probably isn't.
But if you put it into the context you want, your hunch, how would you answer it?
Ask it again.
Is thinking a function of the soul?
Well, again, I would have to say that it depends on your definition of soul. If the soul is the sum total of you, yes. If the soul is if you're dealing with the idea of that there's some kind of binary existence that we have, mind and soul, which I don't really subscribe to, but yeah, then that would be then thinking and soul things would be somewhat mutually exclusive, except when they're not.
Yeah, that's like, are we more thinking or feeling beings? You can't separate it, but we invented the word so we think we can separate.
Right.
Okay, the second Turing question is, can machines think?
I think the jury's out on that, because what the AI that's out there right now is just basically algorithms using information that man has already generated.
Yeah. But then, I heard a guy on KPFK the other day, and says, AI is in its infant stage. We should treat it like a kid and try to raise it well.
I agree with that, but the other day, or today on the news, I heard about a thing where they fed some information into AI to find out about legal precedent. Yeah. And it came up with all these case law things, quotes, like a lawyer does, but they were all made up.
Yeah. Well, that's the history of the world. Everything's made up, dude.
Oh, I'm just saying, if we have enough problem with bad misinformation being masquerading as reality, the more credence we give to incredibility, then we're
Hello. You
I
like
don't it's gonna my kids are gonna suffer from it. I'm gonna be gone in 30 or
yeah.
40 years if I'm lucky. But,
It's McLuhan's line. You mean my whole fallacy is wrong?
that's funny.
Okay. Gary, do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
I think when I was younger, I was pursuing ego. I think now I'm pursuing integrity.
Wow, that is good. So you really get what I'm after. Just because I use certain words, you put it into you can change the words and say, now I'm going to call it ego and
I'm free.
really
I'm free. I can do whatever I want.
you're free. It's because I got it from Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. He says, happiness doesn't tend to last, meaning does tend to last. So, does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more so detecting it or more so creating it?
Well, I mean, if you're detecting something, there's already consciousness involved. So it's sort of you're eating your own tail. I mean, you're biting your own teeth. It's
Yeah.
it's it's a Zen question, basically.
Yeah. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Light.
The poet Audre Lorde said, you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools.
Mm.
Her colleague Yvonne Rainer said, you can if you expose the tool. What new tool do you suggest?
Oh, gosh. I have to think about that statement. You can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Then that presupposes that the master's house is somehow beyond its own tools that built it.
Well, again, you put the questions context you want. Just because I open with a cute quote doesn't mean you have to apply it, and you don't have.
It's a very cute quote, Jerry.
Yeah, this guy. I should have replaced the guy. The guy the other day says that's spiffy quote,
Oh,
but,
nice.
but it is. She's black female, she's probably talking about white supremacy. But Frank Zappa said, "Who are the brain police?" He didn't say the brain police are the evil corporate capitalists, or he says the brain police are the voice inside your head. He just asked it as a question. But because I say, what new tool do you suggest? It's basically what tool do you gravitate towards, and you don't even have to apply the word new, but you can apply the quotes if you want. So,
well, I would say you don't even have to apply the word tool. One of the things that I've identified as an atheist for a long time. I find in my later years now, and from a number of reasons, I'm beginning to become less hostile to the idea of spirituality, and just being able to understand what that means, with separating it from mythology. But those who believe in a higher power or a God believe that meaning is something that's given to us.
right.
And I see meaning as something that we are meaning machines. We put meaning on everything. If we slip and fall, we go, oh, that's because I didn't do my work today, or because I was thinking bad thoughts. Or, it's like we assign meaning. If it wasn't for us, nothing would have any meaning.
Yeah. No, that's good. And what new toy do you suggest?
Toy.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Well, I mean, being a musician, I would like to have, I'd like to get an updated computer. I'd like to get, I have a pretty good one, but, now to get the computer that I used to, use on TV and film, it costs like, $5,000-6,000. So I'm not making enough money in TV anymore to get the highest and newest toy. And But when I was scoring TV, it's like I had racks and racks of gear. Now all of that is in my computer. It's all software now. So
Yeah.
toys. I'm not much of a car guy. I just like stuff that makes me either allows me to either experience something new or learn something new or new experience.
Good. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Whether I have a career, whether I am going to be good at whether the work I'm doing, the art I'm producing, the music I'm producing, is going to be accepted and understood and enjoyed by those who I'm hoping as an audience will watch what I do or listen to what I do. And also, I didn't really have too many sleepless nights until I had kids. But my kids are doing okay now. They're 27 and 25. They were a absolute challenge when when they were teenagers, especially my older one. My older one is now kicking ass as a EDM artist, electronic dance music artist, and she's touring around and doing great. And it's a total kind of music I understand it cursorily, but I don't know how to make it, and she I'm happy that she's doing what she wants to do.
That is so cool. McLuhan learned from a poet that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, so we might learn how to cope with what we don't like about our inventions.
They're the canaries in the coal mine?
That is, I got that on my notes. That's what someone said. It's like the canary in the coal mine. Now, that's not all. We're not trying to make it. Everybody does this, but the poet said that they were artists. Artists were antenna of the race. Even Bob Dylan says, I'm just a radio antenna. But the question I ask you, Gary, is what Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore these hidden psychic effects, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
I don't know if I understand the term hidden psychic effects.
Well, that's like the car is made kind of to get you from point A to point B faster.
Okay.
But we don't realize that it enhances private mobility. We're all alone in these so, a pack of wolves moves together. When the television or the radio came into the living room, it caused all the family to gather around the campfire.
So the radio before that.
Yeah, the radio. So, cell phones have hidden psychic effects. Zoom sessions have something hidden and psychic that we're not aware of. It's like deep sea diving, trying to figure out how our inventions change us. We don't know how spoken word changed us. We just started using it and we don't turn it off. McLuhan had the great line, word is the most universal and addicting drug. So we're all addicted to spoken word and printed word. What do kids do all day? They type. How bad is that? They're typists now. But I'm just saying there's hidden psychic effects. There's the evident ones. The car pollutes the air, but it gets, it's what a car's hidden psychic effect for us was? What? We could go fuck our girlfriends and not be bugged by our parents.
It's an erotic device to me, the car.
And you know what I always say a car was? It was a radio on wheels. Yeah. I played the radio. Yeah. I hit stations. So that's what a hidden psychic effect is. It's something we're not evidently, it's like unintended consequences, they sometimes call it.
Well, let me ask you a question, because I've seen you for many years, but it's only in the last couple of years that I've done some research on you and found out, your artistic background and your proximity to amazing artists, both in where you live and just in your journey is really interesting. And I'm hearing you mention over and over again McLuhan. Now I have the same basic knowledge of who McLuhan was and what he said and all that kind of stuff. But what should I read of him? Should I read a book by
Well,
McLuhan? If so, what should I read?
yeah, you don't need McLuhan is a poet, and he's as hard to understand as James Joyce at Finnegan's Wake.
Well, I
You
haven't
just
tackled that yet.
Well, you just cut to the chase and read Finnegan's Wake out loud with a group of people, and he'll that is the greatest guidebook to studying how our inventions change us.
Wow.
But it's also, you've listened to enough people like Dylan or the Beatles or James Brown. I mean, or how about Chuck Berry? Motivating. That is that is
That's very Ogden Nash.
That's Ogden Nash, totally. But I don't think Chuck got it from Ogden. He got it from just being that antenna and going, I'm motivated. So, I mean, I can refer you to, I mean, the best thing to read by McLuhan is his Playboy interview. I mean, and the other one is read his review of Burroughs' books in the Nation. It's 2 pages.
I will check it out. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, but it's basically, it's hard to get Marshall. It sounds elitist, but it's really hard to really get him. But it's okay to just, he said, half a truth is still a lot of a truth. He's not preaching truths. He's preaching jokes. And like he's like a songwriter,
I love that.
That's what he is, but he's called a media theorist.
Right.
That's wrong, but he would say, hey, leave it, because I write books and I'm in academia, leave it. But here's the key. He teased people to believe his percepts were concepts. So he was teasing people, and he would say, oh, the medium is a message. He didn't mean that TV has no content. He means that TV has content and it's the form of TV. But since we only go for the content, he's going to stress there's form to this.
Oh, yeah. Well, the form is as much of the mess. I always understood that to mean that the delivery system is as much a part of the message as the message itself.
And but people usually say he's saying the form, the medium is more important. He wasn't, but it sounds that way. Yeah. So you got him. So that's good. Yeah, you don't have to read him. But he said you can't get me unless you read Joyce and the Symbolist. And you're already, how you've already read all the Symbolists? Because the 4 big rock poets, Jim Morrison, Patti Smith, Bob Dylan, and Kurt Cobain, all came directly out of the Symbolist. And they are the poets who go, it doesn't matter what I say, it's how I want to make you feel. That's really, you study Symbolist in the Wake, and you can get McLuhan. But anyways, if you get this now, what's the hidden psychic effect of a piano, of your instruments? There's hidden psychic effects, and then there's the thing why you use this instrument. Why do we tend to ignore, the humans in general, ignore the hidden psychic effects? And the artists aren't necessarily broadcasting them on purpose or know they're doing that. Yeah, they're just broadcasting because they're artists. They're not scientists and linear people, So that by being
unless they are.
Well, you're being monks.
I would say Zappa was kind of a scientist in what he was doing.
He was and the Monk nailed it. He said music is math.
Yeah.
But it's a lot. There's a deeper to the being math. You go, okay, my favorite line to jam with Gary is, what is this in the G of key? Have you ever heard that one? It's like that. That freaks people out. What do you mean the G of key? I mean, I'm sorry, the key of G. Right. Just play it in any key. It doesn't matter.
Well, he played it in every key, I think.
Yeah, but why do you think people ignore the hidden real meaning in songs? Let's go in your field. There's sometimes
that's an assumption there. So you're saying that people,
right. I'm not saying all people.
In an example of what you mean.
That people embrace an invention and they don't realize how it's really changing them or shaping their behavior. So that if we do study the, I mean, we've studied the hidden psychic effects of Dylan. There's 80 million books trying to explain Dylan, and he'll go, nah, that's what the best is. Dylan wrote a line in one of his songs that says, "I'm reading James Joyce." So we all went, "Oh, that's cool." And I think it was Gilmore in Rolling Stone said, "Why'd you write that line?" And Dylan goes, "'Cause it rhymes with the next line."
Well, I mean, it's all utilitarian in that stuff, but that's what the magic is, because when you come up with a rhyme and you have to find another rhyme for that and still say what you mean, you wind up increasing the amount of meaning. But I'm trying to figure out what question you're asking, because
I'm trying to say, why do humans, all of us, ignore what artists are really telling us?
I don't think they ignore it. I think you can only get what you get when you get it, at the time that you get it. There's a great song by Charles Aznavour that was a hit for Roy Clark called it's got titles and names are leaving.
But that's all right. What is it? What is it?
1-year-old head.
It doesn't matter. What does it say? What is it? What
well,
is?
no, it's important because it's because I'm confusing it with another song in my head right now. But I've sung this song. I did a lot of shows with the Wrecking Crew, with the original guys who were on all the Yesterday When I Was Young.
Oh yeah.
Now, I remember a line from that when I was a kid, when I was a teenager. I used my magic age as if it were a wand. And I always liked the line. But now that I've sung the song, I understand that song and what Aznavour was saying much more than I could have at the age of 19, 20, 21. So I don't think it's that people ignore it. I think you pick up whatever message your perception is able to perceive at the time that you are living.
No,
I think it's the great geniuses who sometimes are able to see more than the average person can at the younger age.
That's a good answer. And we'll come back around to everything we're exploring. It's cyclical. Do artists have moral obligation?
Well, only in so much as everyone has moral obligation.
Yeah.
I mean, there are, look at Picasso. I mean, the morality of most conductors and visual artists and theater artists would get them canceled in a minute these days.
Yeah.
So, immorality is a maxim of the artists of the 20th century and before. Now, there is a much bigger microscope being foisted upon them. And I think at some point it's either going to go one way or the other. Either we're just going to go, well, fuck it, people are imperfect and they're going to screw up, or we're just going to be trying to put bounds around. I have a neighbor, a great, really smart young kid. And, I sound like an old guy when I say this, but I am. And he believes that words are violence. Words are violence. Yeah. And that is anathema to anyone who grew up in our generation, because words are not violent until someone uses them to commit violence.
Yeah.
I used to tell my kids, there are no bad words. There are just words you can use in school and words you can't.
That's right. It's a tool, and there's an appropriate place. But him saying words are violence is important because he'll eventually realize they're calming and healing, and we hope he does. And that's Burroughs saying language is a virus.
Right.
It's everything we invent. This is the key McLuhan thing. Just say this to him. Everything we invent has services and disservices.
Correct.
So if you want to say words are violent, well, yeah, you can use words disservicely, or you can use them servicely, because guess what, kid? You just told me words are violence. That's the service to words because you communicated something to me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's proof they work.
Yeah, right. right. But
Gotcha.
but I mean, when working with Penn and Teller and stuff like that, we once did a number for a TV show that we did called Penn and Teller's Sin City Spectacular back in 98, 99. It was an hour variety show. Greatest show I ever did. I was music director. We wrote original musical numbers. We had dancers, singers. We did production numbers with stars coming in and doing this stuff. And we did a secular gospel song about not censoring the internet, and one of the things that Penn said before it that is the only answer to bad speech is more speech.
Yeah.
And I I have arguments with my neighbor, and they're of Indian descent. He was born here, but his mom is really interesting. She swam the English Channel for India. And so it's pretty wild. But anyway, let's see, where was I? The only answer to bad speech is more speech.
Yeah.
So the idea that I just lost my train of thought. I get easily derailed from my train of thought.
Don't worry, Gary. Everything will
Even
come
if
back.
I'm not smoking weed.
Look at it. Yeah, everything will come back around. It's not a big deal. But are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
I'm not afraid of ideas at all.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that's ego. If somebody has an idea and it threatens something that you think exists, or something I'll put and personalize it. If it threatens something I think exists, or threatens something that threatens my self-image, I think that would be fear. And fear, of course, is the first step to anger, because anger usually is coming out of fear. So, in a perfect situation, I don't fear any idea.
Beautiful. Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever, or one of them?
Well, what comes up first is when I got a hernia operation at about 3 or 4 years old. I'm not sure what I was lifting that was so heavy that was causing me to get a hernia, but I remember being in a bed in a doctor's office because I had to get this surgery thing. So I'm thinking there was probably earlier memories than that, but that's one of the ones that just comes up when you ask that question.
Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Oh, it's a blessing. Absolutely. I mean, especially in later life. I mean, if you haven't yet, tripped into the land of dementia, I find that my memories of my life are, I mean, I don't think I'm not a person who has no regrets, but I probably have so much affection for all the things that I've, been through that I would hate it if I was not able to every once in a while call it up.
Yeah. Tell me someone within your immediate family, then outside your immediate family, just briefly, who had an impact on you, in what kind of like a role model, in what specifically was that impact?
Well, my mom, because she was a singer, and she actually used to hang out with like jazz and jazz singers. She did a 78 RPM demo that I had a copy of, where her backup band was Oscar Moore and Johnny Moore. Oscar Moore, yeah, you know who they are, and so she was hanging out with all the black jazz musicians. I'd like to think that she was having sex with them, but I am obviously not the issue of that union.
So this was in LA?
Yeah, this was in LA. There was a string of jazz clubs all down 8th Avenue. Up to 8th Street, not 8th Avenue. 8th Street. And your Taylor Steakhouse is on 8th. There were a string of jazz clubs where you could go. My dad was a bar hopping guy before he quit drinking. But you could go to one place and see Joe Williams, another place and see Billy Daniels. And then, of course, there was Central Avenue and all this stuff. And she was a part of that scene. But then she also was making her money being a legal secretary. And then she got married, so she gave up her musical career. But she was an amazing influence on me, because I started playing my toy piano when I was a little kid. So she made sure I got piano lessons, and I had a great teacher. And I just kept playing. And then when the Beatles came out, I started playing guitar. and then went back to piano in my later high school and early college years. But she was, I think, my biggest influence on me, because she got, she understood the music, and she understood that that's who I was, and that's what I did. My out of family influence is probably Henry Mancini.
Wow, how cool is that?
I lived with his daughter for about 8 years. We're still very dear friends. And Henry was such an amazing, I mean, as you know, there are few truly great people you meet in your life. And he was not only a great composer, not only had studied, with Boulanger and wrote for the Dorseys and all those big bands, but he introduced jazz a lot of introducing jazz into film scoring. But
Yeah.
he also was a guy who understood good wine, understood good food, good cigars, knew how to live. And just, I mean, he was just an incredible person. And he was a bit of a mentor. So, I have original scores of his. I have a conducting baton of his. I have his click book. You know what a click book is?
Wow, what is it?
Click book was a gigantic book that was made by this guy named Carroll Knudsen. And before digital metronomes and SMPTE time code and all that stuff, what you would do is they have streamers that go across a film. Like if you were scoring a film,
Yeah.
there'd be a streamer that would say da boom, and that's where you would put the cue of the music. And the way you found that is because they would put a punch in the film, which would be now the way it worked is a 60 BPM was 8.0 click, I think, and then 16.0 was 120, which is 2 times 60. And so you would have the tempo, and the tempo could change by the amount of how many frames between each click. And so you had a book which told you exactly what moment, exactly what second at that tempo something would occur on. So if you've got a fight scene where you need to have a piece of music jump in, this book would do it, and you would, so I was at the early part of my film scoring career, as such as it is. I learned how to use it, and then of course we had the computers, and so we could get all that math done with the computer. But it's great, and he was just, I couldn't have been more lucky to have been associated with him. He got me into. He introduced me to Lalo Schifrin, who I used to ghostwrite for a while and stuff like that. So,
What an amazing, that's beautiful. And just an aside, did you ever see Mike Lang play a tribute to Henry Mancini at Jazz Bakery?
Mike was a dear friend of mine. When I used to do sessions for Lalo, he was on it. Mike was one of the sweetest guys in the world. Just recently passed away. My other dear friend Debbie Pearl was in a relationship with him, and she had really found the love of her life, and so did he. And then he, fucking cancer came along, and my mom died of that too. So you're not allowed to get it, and no one is allowed to get it. Tell Susie she can't get it either.
I love that. That's James Brown, as serious as cancer.
Yeah, right.
But Mike Lang, you ever see that picture of him in the Lumpy Gravy session with Zappa?
No, show me. Send it to me.
Oh, it's you just put in Google Images Frank Zappa and Mike Lang. It is so cool.
He's done everything. He was such an amazing player.
He loved Zappa. He used to call the Zappa hotline.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're Mike Lang? I mean, you play with Ella and Frank and everybody.
Well, I worked a little with Ian Underwood too.
Oh, that's beautiful. I was trying to interview Mike for years, and I think he was kind of declining in health, and I didn't get him before he died. And because all these same questions, it would be great. So did your parents raise you a particular religion?
Well, my dad was an old Chicago Catholic boy. That's why he was married 5 times. He couldn't live with a woman. He had to marry them. So,
Wow.
But my mom, so I was baptized Catholic because of my dad, but I never attended like mass or anything like that. And so my parents, because, I have a song about my growing up in Glendale that's if you're interested, I'll send it to you, because it's all about how Glendale was a sundown town when I was growing up there. Put put me back in the train of
Your
thought.
mom, did your mom raise you a particular
Oh
religion?
yeah, okay. So everybody went to church because that was what you did. That was
Yeah.
the normal social thing that you did. Every Sunday you went to church, but none of us were like, they are today, these, crazy, religious fanatics that are running the Republican
Yeah.
Party and other things. But it was Presbyterian. So the only thing, so if I wanted to rebel against the Presbyterian Church, all I really knew that they stood for was, potluck dinners on Sunday and ambrosia salad. So that's basically what I remember about the Catholic Church. I mean, about the Presbyterian Church. It was kind of a very a white kind of church, but I don't remember anything doctrinal where you had to do this, or it was fairly easy going.
Well, do you pray, Gary?
It's interesting. I've been involved in 12-step programs a little bit since my daughter was an addict, and she's 4 years sober now, which is great. But I find it difficult to call what I do praying. Meditating is easy because I got into yoga. I was turned on to yoga in a guided acid trip by a yogi who was an acolyte of Swami Satchidananda back in about 73 or 4 or something. But I mean, the way I've handled the whole higher power idea in the 12-step programs is that I believe there was probably always something inside me that whenever I was going to do something stupid or dishonest or lack of integrity, there was probably, I think I remember having something in my head that went, maybe you shouldn't do that. So for me, that's what that is. For me to supplicate to it, I don't really do that, but I do. I do try to look for the guidance of my higher self.
Beautiful. If God exists, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
You were wrong.
You know how many? 80 to 90% of people go, "You did a good job." I'm like, I've already heard that.
I would laugh. It would crack me up if he went, guess what? You, Christopher Hitchens, all you people were just fucking wrong.
I like this one guy,
Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, you guys were all wrong. I like you all, but you were wrong.
You're wrong. You got to meet this guy. He writes comical songs, and Susie knew him from way back. And I says,
Who's that?
what do you? I forgot his name. I'll Bill something. I'll tell you, but
not Bill Larkin.
No, but I says, what would you like God to say to you after you die? And he goes, I checked the record here. I did a mistake. You're going back.
Well, I guess that would be it. But I would amend that. You're going back at about the age of 45.
Were you no? Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
I don't think evil is anything that exists outside of ourselves. It's us that brings evil to the world.
Yeah.
And
well,
so evil is as evil does.
Yeah.
I mean, even Donald Trump perhaps tomorrow could have some kind of, even though he's a sociopath, so it's unlikely, but he could tomorrow go, oh, I've been a totally selfish asshole my whole life. And then he would not be evil anymore. He would have to take responsibility for the evil that he did. But I don't see evil as a concept outside of our own actions.
Yeah, that's a question I ask people sometimes. I goes, if Trump gets thrown in jail, he writes a book and says, I'm sorry, I messed up. Would you forgive him?
Well, Christian Church would. I wouldn't forgive him. I would allow him to feel better about himself. But, as a sociopath, he doesn't feel bad about himself anyway.
I shouldn't laugh. But really, Gary, the hidden question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I will set it up. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurai, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is,
I'll tell you Penn and Teller's quote on that.
Okay.
Never forget, but never let them know you remember.
Oh, that's good.
So
Never. But let me just finish the wording. It's
sorry.
first, before you tell me how to advise someone to deal with an enemy, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
Well, I loved Alan Watts when I was coming up, and I had the joy of just giving a couple of Alan Watts books to my 27-year-old, and for her to really like them, which was really awesome. Yeah, I read a lot of him when I was. I used to listen to those broadcasts on the radio late at night.
Yeah.
Do you remember those in
Well,
LA?
That's Roy of Hollywood. Even though he dies, they still play him every midnight at, I think, Monday, and every Sunday at 8. Yeah.
Well,
I listen religiously. Yeah.
so I think, I mean, I have people who have done bad things to me. Most of the things that people have done that have been bad to me, I have allowed myself by my own behavior to have been vulnerable to what they could do bad to me. So it's always wrapped up in my own, my own search for sensual pleasure or some kind of fulfillment that was maybe not the best idea for me to do, and it allowed me to be open to somebody who can take advantage of me.
Yeah.
So, do I want to be a person who can forgive those who I would consider an enemy, or those people? Yes, I want to do that. I'm not totally 100% able to do that.
But what do you do? Like, if your daughter came and said, I have an enemy, how would you advise her what to do?
Well, I don't know. I mean, when she was coming up and she had when she was like 16, and there was 21-year-old guys who wanted to tattoo her for $50 and then fuck her. I would have done whatever I could, send those guys to jail because she's underage. I mean, I would have been ready to. I mean, if I was able to hurt them physically, I probably would have. So I think that in those moments, when you're protecting somebody you love, so I don't know what to. I wouldn't know what to tell her, but I would just I've learned, I guess, to wait for a while.
Nice. That's wait it out.
See if the situation resolves itself before you get in there and make it worse.
Yeah. James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin 100 years ago. He basically checked out. He said, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? Years later, Faulkner said, sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
And I should comment on that. If I was going to comment on it, I'd say, well, it would sort of put us all out of business.
That is a great comment on that line. Let's move on. So now, Gary, you sort of traced this briefly. You got a toy piano. Where did your calling come up and go, that's what I want to do for my life, is write lyrics and write music? Where's that tipping point?
It wasn't a straight line. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to kind of fantasize about having a show, Gary Stockdale show, something like that. But then
pre the Beatles on Ed Sullivan?
Well, I mean, it's like that, that I was, because my mom was an entertainer, and and I could sing decently at a young age, and I started playing piano at 4. So I always have thought of myself as a performer. But I didn't really think it's funny because when I was in high school, I was thinking, well, I want to be an arranger, because I knew that was something you could do. But I also got into a band and wrote a couple songs with the band members. And so we used to play around Burbank and this place called McCambridge Park and all that stuff. We used to do dances and stuff. And then when I got into what I got late in high school, I wanted to go into theater. I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be a director. So I went to LA City College here in LA which at the time in the early 70s was one of the best theater schools. Say that 5 times fast. Best theater schools in. It turned out more working actors than UCLA or USC. USC and UCLA put out teachers. LA City College, when I came in there, Mark Hamill was just coming out. My classmates were Diana Canova, who was Judy Canova's daughter, who was on Soap and many, many other things. Debbie Shapiro-Gravitt, who, was a Tony winner. And before then, in the theater department at LA City College, Robert Vaughn had gone there, James Coburn, Paul Winfield, Charles Gordon, who wrote No Place to Be Somebody. So it was a really great theater department. But they sort of found out I could play the piano, so I wound up doing music for shows, and then we started writing songs for shows. I had this wonderful actor, writer person named Sheila Dabney, who was a Black actress. I grew up in Glendale. And that was all white. I mean, no Black person could be. They had to be off the streets by sundown, and none of them lived there. Nobody could own a house there because it was all in the thing. So when I got to LA City College, it was Technicolor. I mean, I was not looking for blondes. I was, I have no melanin at all. I had to marry into it, but. So Sheila really educated me a lot, and she drove me. She was a great performer, just really intense, a lot of substance abuse problems, all that stuff. And we were all crazy, but so I got into writing for theater, and I started realizing that I wanted to be a songwriter. So I started writing songs. I used to play piano at the Comedy Store in '77 and '78, which comprised of playing for 45 minutes before the 9 o'clock show and the 11:30 show, and then playing on and off the different comics. And so that also gave me a good insight into comedy and how that works. And it was an amazing time, because Letterman and Leno and all these guys were just coming up. They were there every night. I used to, every once in a while, Richard Pryor would come in to work out bits for his movies. So I was like 5 feet from the comedy mind of our generation.
Wow.
And just it was an amazing show. So I made $20 a night from working from 9 to 1:30.
Wow, that is great.
Which was $20 more than any of the comedians were making at the time.
Oh my God.
But that was the beginning of the comedy boom, 77, 78. And then I got into something called Summit. Well, this was part of my spiritual journey, because after I got that enlightening experience from the yoga guy, acid, he had me read from the Tibetan Book of the Dead and ask for what I wanted from the trip, and sort of I had like the first enlightenment experience that I ever had, and it sort of was a laughing experience for me, and it sort of has been resonant in my life ever since. But so I did this thing called Summit, which was originally called Playground, which was a little like the Est thing, but a little more. He was kind of a big fat guy who smoked instead of like, Werner Erhard with the button-down suit and everything like that. So I was attracted to him as if he was kind of a Zen master for me. So I was involved with that for a number of years, but I used to do shows for them too. And then because I met Felice Mancini there, I started getting into, I started learning about film scoring. I took some classes at Dick Grove. I did the music department after I did the theater department at LA City College, because I realized after being in the theater department, music is what I do, but I still perform. I'm in the middle of writing a one-man theater piece right now, a musical theater piece with my co-writers and a director. And so I'll be performing in character and also playing and singing at the same time coming up soon. I'll let you guys know about it when.
Yeah, that's good. But you gave me a good background there, so you can return to it. Let's go into this. So once you started,
Jerry was getting bored with the life story, ladies and gentlemen.
No. But I mean, you that was sort of your tipping point. You answered the question, because it went from music to theater, and then you realize that you could write lyrics. So this is
well, whatever people pay you to do. I never have had to work a straight gig like since my mid-20s. I've always been able to make money as a musician,
Yeah.
It's so much more difficult for kids now, but that was
Yeah.
the turning point, and this is what I do.
But I'm saying, Gary, there is a point where this question applies to this. There's a point where you realize, oh, I can play piano and get $20 and stand, I'm in the midst of Leno and Pryor, and I can get into the theater business, into show business. And you're a very witty songwriter, composer,
Well, thank you.
and a performer, and you're a good singer. So these questions are about that. When you're writing a Gary song, solely Gary, no commission, no here's the assignment. When you're writing a Gary song, a screenwriting teacher told me great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play when you're writing a Gary song?
I don't know, because I spent a certain amount of time in the 80s trying to write hit songs. Trying to write the kind of song, it's like everybody was doing. Like my song.
I thought you were going to break into Alfred Johnson there for a second.
Oh, God, Alfred is a crazy genius. Alfred, that's another story.
But you know what you were doing almost was what Carole King set the standard. She said it.
Yeah, I mean, but that was very 80s kind of chord change and stuff like that. So and I was writing with a guy that was a staff writer at April Blackwood, which was the CBS Music, the BMI publishing company for. So I was trying to hit that. I used to play this club called At My Place in LA all the time.
Oh God, I know all about
that. I didn't think of myself as a lyricist, even though I'd been a lyricist for my theater stuff. And I would try to sell songs of mine, and people would say that's a little too musical theatery. But as I sort of gave up, and it sort of gave up on me, and I kind of gave up on the TV. I was writing instrumental music for scoring for a long time. That's how I made a lot of money doing that. But I don't think that was my greatest love. I enjoyed doing it. It was great. I love being in front of an orchestra. It's just amazing. But I started writing songs about my life and what I think and all that stuff much later than we're getting an echo here. That's what happened.
No, that's all right. But you're answering it, and that's what I like is we can talk about all that other stuff, but I'm talking about Gary's songs. In that regard, Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much were you thinking? How much were you thinking of your listener when you write a Gary song?
I don't think I'm thinking of the listener. I'm thinking of clarity.
Wow. Thinking of clarity. Now suss that out. What do you mean by that?
Well, I'm a huge Sondheim fan. And for him to write something that has the craft that he writes, but there is nothing in the craft that detracts from the clarity of the message. Like every joke, every line, everything is leading towards the meaning, clear meaning, but the way he gets there is just the cleverest and yet the most emotionally affecting way. But if you are a person who writes lyrics, you just go, oh my God, he just rhymed mustache and just ash. I mean, how do you do that? It's amazing. So you're an artist. I mean, it's like,
that's like Susie rhyming damn it with mammoth.
Well, I love that. It's a great.
That is an amazing line to damn it. And then but this is really good.
Well, and Susie's a very pure artist.
Yeah. But I would like to do a salon. I've been wanting to do a salon with Brian and Bill and you for years about this. And there's another guy who's just totally Sondheim out, and he's a brilliant guy that I just interviewed last week. So we'll do the salon. But the salon was basically Well, I don't want to get into that music yet, but I have to tell you, the salon was basically based on um, uh, when I asked Charlie Hayden, I said, in the middle of this Ornette Coleman song, you quote an old hillbilly Appalachian tune. What is that? And he goes, that's old Joe Clark. And I goes, who wrote it? And he goes, nobody wrote it.
Right. Well, that's what Dylan did at the beginning of his career. He just stole old folk melodies, and
well, that's what everybody does. I mean, Igor stole the folk tunes from. I mean, Zappa at the end of his life was sitting there telling Mike Keneally, "Oh, you know that song? That comes from this old greasy LA." And we could break him down usually, and he's evident at quoting, but sometimes he isn't. And so, but anyways, we'll do that.
I did for one musical that I wrote. A whole section is just stolen from a bit of Three Penny Opera. Kurt Weill is another one of my favorite composers of all time.
Bill Burnett wrote a song in 10 years after he wrote it. A guy came, says, dude, that you quoted the Coasters.
Oh, wow.
He goes, I did. He didn't even realize it. That's the zeitgeist. See, to me, it's Oscar Wilde saying everything's in public domain.
Well,
nobody owns anything. That intellectual property, IP on IP.
Well, I think there's. I don't know that I can make an absolute statement in that sense because if we lose the concept of intellectual property, then we lose. I mean, look, back end.
Well, we're not going to lose it.
Back end is what keeps us alive. Yeah. Getting paid for that. But I was going to say that I was in a songwriting class. This woman Harriet Schock, who's and Tracy Newman was in the class too, and a wonderful, wonderful friend of ours who's passed away named Suzanne Huang, who was brilliant. But she would, when we would present a song, she was one of those people who would go, "Isn't that melody from another?" Like she would kind of try to think. And I said, "Yeah, there's 5 notes from another song, but there's 5 notes from like 10 other songs." It's like
that's Brad. Every day, Susie goes over and says, "Here's my new song," and Brad goes, "Well, that's that and that and that." Well, that's T.S. Eliot, the poet, saying the mature poet steals, the immature poet imitates.
Right, or borrows. Yeah. Genius steals.
But then what? Well, before I say what is this question, I have to ask you this. McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness. So knife and fork extends our teeth. The shutter in a camera extends our eyelid. Even like non-tangible, maybe religion or philosophy extends consciousness. There's 2 things. What does the instrument, whether it's the piano or the guitar, extend for you? What humanness? And then what does the pen extend? Because you're writing lyrics. So those 2 inventions, what humanness is the instrument extending for you?
Again, I'm not really sure I understand the context of your question. So let me say what I think it is.
Yeah.
The tools we use to express ourselves, which Bach had paper and a piece of, he had a harpsichord and paper to do that. He studied all of Buxtehude's scores, and he used to write them, actually just copy them all down. So that was the way he could learn. Well, now, with the computer, I rarely put pen to paper anymore. It's all on the computer.
It's all
but it's all as you said, the extension of our ideas. It's the ability to communicate those ideas. I mean, Helen Keller is the perfect example. She had no speech, no, couldn't see, but she found another way to communicate her ideas.
No, that's the answer. It's communication. So, but it was either the keyboard or the pen. Now, Gary, what is the function of music?
Same as it always was. Who was it said? It's an artist who was just I think maybe she passed away, or no, it's a music artist. Yes, it just passed away. I can't remember who she was. Very much in the Lamont Young and the kind of it's a terrible term, minimalism. But she said that music is God,
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
and I have a song that I have not finished writing yet, and I hope somebody doesn't steal it. But it's called the groove. It's the groove that is God.
That's great. Well, this is the root of that question is John Cage saying he learned from his teacher that the function of music is to soothe the soul and make it susceptible for divine intervention.
Soothe is a difficult word for me.
But the divine intervention,
nothing that Zappa did soothed.
No, there is. There's real nice melodies.
No, it's beautiful stuff. But I mean, I'm just saying that I would say it's the most direct line to the atavistic part of humanity, of the
What's that word mean? What's that word mean?
I think it means more primitive, more in other words, the lizard brain. It you can I always say this, you can scrape off huge amounts of the cerebral cortex, and you can still do music. It's really deep in the lower brain. So it reaches something that I think is even beyond visual art.
Yeah, exactly. That's Walter Pater said, all art aspires to the condition of music. Painting, literature, everything wishes it could be as cool as music.
Could be. Maybe it's because it's real time.
Yeah, well, that it was real time. That's another huge thing. That's Tom Waits saying the best music doesn't want to be recorded. I asked Brad once, he's got a lathe to cut cylinders. He's got 78s. He's got everything. I said, did recording music ruin music? And he goes, yeah. He knows what I mean by ruin. It changed it. But it's a sacred thing to play music live.
The 88 key piano changed everything. It allowed you to have absolute, when you have a harpsichord, you had 3 octaves or something like that, 4 octaves. And all of a sudden you could go from down to here and you could be loud because these hammers were hitting the thing instead of plucking strings. So, I mean, I think to extend your metaphor and your idea, it's just, every new technology extends and a part of it doesn't die, but a part of it becomes less important.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly.
Sheet music is of very little importance now.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that Storm and Norman, Susie's one of her first partners, said is, what's the function of music? He says, to keep people from going insane. And so, that is it. It is an amazing, I always call it a healing force, but Mickey Hart from the Dead said it started off as communicating as a warning system. They're coming to steal our food by hitting certain beats on the drums or the logs. And then Dylan Buston, who you should meet, the foremost expert on Thoreau and Emerson, amazing songwriter in Boston, he said it's to dance. The function of music is, and there's a cliche that goes, if you can't say it, sing it. If you can't sing it, dance it. So it is amazing. So then Copeland says the 4 ingredients of music are melody, harmony, rhythm, and tone color. In non-academic terms, what is tone color?
Well, easily, the most easy way to say it is the difference between a violin playing, high tremolo on a harmonic and a double contrabassoon. I mean, its tone color is high, low, strident, mellow, sweet, So tone color. I'm interested in why he didn't mention time, because
Well, this
maybe
is
he means that by rhythm.
yeah, well, this I would say he put time and rhythm, but this is Copeland reducing it. So I love when people are sophisticated like you and they go, well, there's more than those four, but we're just at this point talking about these four. I'm open for expanding. How do you focus or integrate the four? Melody, harmony, rhythm, and tone color. Are you focusing on one when you're writing? I'm talking about when you're writing a Gary song, not an assignment. When you're writing one of your songs, how do you focus or integrate those four? Is there a ritual, a
I don't.
procedure?
No, I don't think about it. It's sort of like, I mean, like writing musical theater. Almost always, I start with a lyric idea, and as I work on that lyric, a music idea takes shape.
Yeah,
But I mean, when I was doing music, straight instrumental music for movies and TV and stuff like that, it's the tone color, the dramatic nature of the piece or whatever it was. If it was a quirky thing, it would have a quirky sound. I I scored, like, and working against the idea is often fun. Like if you're doing a sad thing, and not using sad music, using more joyful music can make you cry more than if you're playing
yeah.
you know something sad. But I don't I usually I'm just you know I think I don't have a way that I work, but I do work mostly with lyric on musical theater stuff. On pop stuff, usually kind of a groove, but that's not,
Groove first, yeah. But
not
it's not, I'm not trying to nail you to a specific pattern. I'm just
you're nailing me to a cross.
this is like all my things are just prompts. You never have to answer the question.
No,
But it's
this
funny
is great, Jerry. You are amazing. This is really
okay, well, thank you. Listen, it's like the Brill Building songwriters, which we should have a Brill Building with all you, the great songwriters we have. It's like, what came first, the lyric or the melody? And they go, the phone call.
not the deadline was. I mean, this was the big difference between when I started writing for my own performances, as opposed to writing, because I wrote on deadline. That's what kept me going, because I
Yeah,
had to get this done. I was an up all nighter guy, because music is the last thing to go on a TV show. So,
yeah,
I always deadlines were what drove me.
yeah.
It took more discipline for me to actually write my own songs without, you have to get it in by this time type thing.
Yeah. Or as Michael Simmons calls it, I don't like this wording, but he calls it the dread line instead of dread line. I says, I don't want to be dread. I like it to be a little poker and get like, okay, get it done.
Right.
But here's my friend, 3 T's of music: technique, theory, and taste. So you learn how to play these instruments, you know the theory, the structure. How does one acquire taste?
I don't know. I mean, it's like, uh, these are very, very subjective things, and one man's good taste is another. I mean, I appreciate deeply really jarring art and really jarring music, and there are people whose tastes would not accompany that. I mean, I go to the Green Umbrella series, down at the Music Center, not Music Center, at the Disney Hall, which is the more contemporary composition stuff. My wife doesn't like that. She doesn't really want to be challenged when she listens to music.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, but I mean, acquiring taste, I'll tell you the answer I usually get and tell me how do you lean towards writing
I
songs?
appreciate you giving me the answer.
Yeah. But no, it's more like they're just prompts. But most people say experience and exposure. But is that really why you were able to listen to more experimental music in the long run? because your mom was giving you the ability to hear all things, or some people gravitate towards certain
Well, I
things?
think it's the accident of fate. I mean, I was in high school, and we had a teacher, a theater teacher, who did a production of Importance of Being Earnest, and I
Yeah,
was like in 10th or 11th grade. Now, introducing a 10th or 11th grader to Oscar Wilde is
yeah.
great in itself, but what he did was he used the stage set that he used was inspired by Aubrey Beardsley. So I'm at the height of hormone development, and I'm looking at Aubrey Beardsley. I said, "This is the art. This is the art I like." So so I think I always went for something that was edgier. I mean,
Edgy. But you had,
but I don't do edgy stuff necessarily.
I know, but
I'm
that's what,
fairly a tonal
yeah,
composer, but
yeah,
I gravitate and love
yeah,
to hear stuff that pushes the envelope.
yeah. So this is again McLuhan, and there's two thoughts here. Song is slowed down speech. The reason cultures have different musical taste is ultimately connected to language difference. So we can even take the first part out if you don't want to comment on that. Song is slow down speech.
Well, I would have a comment on that.
Go
I
ahead.
I
Go ahead.
teach vocals.
Yeah.
I'm a vocal teacher at a local college. Since I don't have a degree, I can't teach at a university. I can teach at a private college.
Yeah.
So I tell people, and this is what I had a great singing teacher who died in his 80s a couple of years ago. I miss him terribly. His name was Robert Edwards. He taught Michael McDonald. He taught Sheryl Crow. He taught a lot of great people. But he says singing is talking on pitch.
Yes. Wow. You know what John Hendricks said, that Charlie Parker's the highest form of talking.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, it's a
That's
dialogue. I mean, the music and the antiphonal kind of stuff was always
yeah,
dialogue. It was like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Let's do it together. And then they do it together. It's a conversation. And all music,
yeah,
conversations with myself too, with Bill Evans.
yeah, and it's call and response. So, but you get it. See, people, though, song isn't slow down speech; it could be speeded up speech. So McLuhan's talking metaphorically there
Yeah.
in the first part, but the second part, he's putting it in this realm of speech, like you said, talking. The reason cultures have different musical taste is ultimately connected to language difference. What's your take on that part?
Oh, ask it again, because I think I understood what you said, but say it
The,
again.
the reason cultures have different musical tastes is ultimately connected to language difference.
Mm. It very well could be. It could be the angularity or a particular sound in Chinese speech that causes them to have that maybe that has something to do with it. And maybe it has to also do with the regularity of English, of Latinate or Germanic language that contributes to the very horizontal, not horizontal, the vertical organization of music that's more there. It very well could have to do with language, but the language has to do with philosophy, and it has to do with temperature, and it has to do with the kind of music that you make when you're in a hot, humid country as opposed to when you're freezing.
Yeah, that's the Eskimos compared to the desert. What's more fundamental, Gary, language or music?
It's all the same.
Wow, all the same.
I mean, communicate. Any art is communication, and speech
Yeah.
is communication. And of course, what we're doing right now is communicating. I don't. Yeah, I don't. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Tell me an instrumental that makes you laugh.
Oh man. Well, the Soupy Sales theme.
All right. How does it go? Hum it a little. Who wrote it?
who knows? I think it was just a library piece of music that he found, and he sped it up, kind of stuff like that. But that music makes me laugh. What I loved, the great thing about I hate this one. Curb Your Enthusiasm, Larry David.
Yeah.
You know, I learned from scoring a comedy is that comedy's better when you score it like reality. You score it like real drama. You don't go, for comedy. You don't do comedy music. You do serious music that's just a little bit skewed or a little bit over the top dramatically. And that's what makes it funny. Like when they did Airplane, it was basically like a Dmitri Tiomkin score. I think Elmer Bernstein did it, and he just overdid the romanticism of it. But because Larry David was such an abhorrent character, because he was so obnoxious, they had that, they had, so that comedy, quote unquote, music underneath it made it funnier because he was so obnoxious, and it's that balance. It's like so that makes me laugh. Do you ever see a movie called Start the Revolution Without Me?
Oh yeah, I used to show it.
It's one of my favorite movies. Not that many people know about it, but it is so over the top in so many ways. And the year was 1789. It totally just plays with all the expectations of that kind of historical epic, and that's why I love that. I love it when you can understand the joke that the composer's making.
It's really, really brilliant. You're a good listener and a good composer. And here's the thing, Gary. I interviewed John Else the other day. He made Day of Trinity's an amazing documentarian. He shot Crumb. He's a cinematographer.
I love that.
He taught journalism in Berkeley for 30 years. This guy, I was lucky. And he said, he's worked with all the greats. And he said, you don't show people crying to get the audience to cry. Exactly. You show, and that's sort of what you were just talking about. Yeah. You don't do that to, so it's knowing how to mix that. So
it's when Vivian Lee at the end of Gone with the Wind goes, because tomorrow's another day. She's not going, tomorrow's another day and we're going to lose our house. She's like, I'm not going to let anything stop me. And that is when you cry, because you're going, the bravery in the face of the great tragedy.
Yeah. Maud Maggart.
Yes. She's so wonderful.
Her dad.
Yes, of course. Brandon. Yeah.
Vivian Lee. Now I says, man, tell me about that. So Thelonious Monk said there are no wrong notes. Any comment?
Well, and Miles Davis said it's not the note, it's not the mistake or the bad note, it's which note you choose after it.
Yeah. Well, did you know Hatta Brooks? We said there are no wrong notes. She goes, no, there's wrong notes. It's just how good you cover them up.
Yeah, well, exactly. That's the same thing. Yeah, I'm good at that. I have a lot of clams when I play, but I can usually kind of, make it sound like I know what I'm doing.
Well, here's the funny thing about Susie. When she messes up on a lyric, she literally slaps herself. So does that endear her to the audience more? Because they're like, I paid money to see you be a professional and you're messing up. And they go, oh, you're human.
Yeah, if you have a sense of humor about stuff like that, I forget, I forget lyrics or, so, and I make a joke out of it. And because it is a joke, I mean, it's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. But Monk also said silence is the loudest sound in the universe. And Miles said it's the space between notes. And George Clinton nailed it. He said funk is the absence of.
Yeah.
So how do you integrate silence or not playing? How do you know when to not play or have notes going?
I don't know. I guess it comes down to taste.
Yeah. You're a performer as well, Gary. You know how to get in front of an audience and sing. This is Ruth Draper. The key is to bring the audience up onto the stage and into the scene with you. It is they who must give you even more than you give them
Mm.
in the way of imagination and creative power. Well, that sounds good. How do you do that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's I like, I look at my audience. I look at the people in the audience when I perform, and I see if I'm reaching them or not. And if it's like the tendency, the mistake that some performers make, and I make it too. It's like, if you see someone who's not responding, you go, how am I going to reach that person? That's a mistake. You should never do that. But of course, we all do. So I don't know. I mean, I guess you just do your best. I mean, sometimes you're going to suck, and sometimes you're not going to suck, and sometimes you're going to be great, and sometimes you're going to, not reach your crowd. You just got to do what you do. I mean, and keep hoping that people want to hear it.
Well, here's Leonard Cohen on the same subject. The only way you can sell a concert is to put yourself at risk. And if you don't do that, people know. What role does risk taking play in your creative process?
Well, I'm taking a risk right now with the show that we're writing. It's a one man musical. It's based on an idea of a middlingly successful Broadway composer who has all kinds of resentments about where his career should have gone. Who's playing all the songs from all the musicals he did throughout his life, which of course are all not real musicals, but they all need to seem like real musicals. So we've actually got a song about Duchamp in the.
Oh, good! I love it.
And it's in there, and there. I mean, we wrote a musical called Bukowsical back in 2007 that won the New York Fringe Festival. And it was kind of a meta thing where it was like, it was the joke of the show. It was an edgy Los Angeles theater company run by its charismatic founder who does these musicals, with a very talented cast, but they're the worst ideas for musicals ever. Like his former ideas were things like, Bergen-Belsen Bingo and the Boys in the Band from Brazil. And my favorite one was Ack, a Kathy musical. but so he thought it would be a good idea. This founder guy thought it would be a good idea to do a musical based on the life of Charles Bukowski.
Oh,
so it was like a kind of a legitimate musical that had a lot of fucks in it.
That's funny because a few things on Bukowski. He's the most stolen book in bookstores.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and then
more than Jerry Rubin,
huh? my roommates in college showed me this poem.
Or Abby Hoffman, rather. Abby Hoffman.
Yeah, Abby wrote "Steal This Book," and my college roommate showed me this poem. It's about fucking a dead one. I was like, this is sick. And then I move out here 43 years ago, and I read in People magazine an article about Bukowski. I goes, oh, that's that poet, and he lives down near San Pedro, and Sean Penn and Madonna are visiting him,
right.
And his neighbors like, what the fuck are these people visiting him for? He's a fucking drunk,
Well, the first line of that musical is, what's the feeling you get when you're down on your luck and you're too drunk to fuck? Bukowski.
Then the last Bukowski was my friend had to, as a employee at the Santa Monica Library, when a wino passed out in the bathroom, he had to call the cops. So they're pulling the wino out. He called the cops on, and it's Bukowski. And he says, I called the cops on my hero.
Well, he was around the area when I lived, at LA City College, that whole area, that's where he lived. And so I wasn't there, but a friend of mine said that one party that we were in college when they were doing, it was a party. He comes into the party, walks through the living room, walks to the kitchen, and barfs in the sink.
Yeah, the publisher of Bukowski just got lucky.
Yeah.
He's a good writer, but he's not that good that you publish everything he ever wrote. But because he got the reputation, he did publish everything he wrote. So then there's no discerning quality in his literature. People like go, give me a break. But
Well, that's part of what we were making fun of. Our show was making fun of musical theater in general,
yeah,
because we were, you know, playing with the tropes of it, but also we were making fun of, poking fun at the the romantic notion that Bukowski was somehow the last honest man, you know, or like, you know, like a you know, a teller of truth, you know. So a lot of it was just, you know, whatever the fuck he wanted to say, which is actually
yeah.
true for all of us.
Well, you know, when I read the New Yorker article about Bukowski years ago, I finally got him. He didn't try to write poetry; he just wrote it. So it was more like just breathing. It's not, you know, uh, there's a lot of artists that are like that. They have a compulsion to do it. And it doesn't matter if they make it in the long run. And then somebody finds, oh, I can market this shit, and then they're like, wow, you know. But Gary, you know, I asked for 90 minutes. It's already 90 minutes, and we only got through some of the questions. Do you mind if we schedule part two? It'd be like 4 or 5 months down the line.
I would love that. It's a joy,
Yeah.
it's a joy to talk to you. I love. I had no idea what this was going to be like, and I'm pleasantly surprised. And you know, I first met Susie, and then met you, and like I said, I did a little digging into what your background is and who you have you know, been around and been a part of, and it's pretty great. And you know, I envy it in some ways because, you know, you were right there in some very interesting scenes.
Wow, you too, man. I mean, come on. We got a lot of crossover. But do you want to go a few more minutes, or do you want to
Fairly soon, I have to go get my wife some dinner.
how many minutes could you go longer? Because we could just stop now.
How about? Well, it's up to you. 5 minutes maybe, but it's already
Okay.
your call.
Let's do one more musical question.
Okay.
And then I'll have that. This is Viola Spolin. You know who she was
Yes, 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 yes.
you know who she is. I usually explain because it's amazing being a social worker inventing comedy improv.
Right.
It's pretty amazing in America.
No, I know because of the theater background. So I
Yeah.
know who she is. Yeah.
So she said, if the audience cannot see your struggle to achieve something, they cannot root for you to achieve it.
Wow, I
So
love that.
what role does struggle play in your creative process?
Well, I think what she said. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, that's a brilliant way to express it. I mean, I think there are artists who just it pours out of them. It's always work for me.
Yeah.
But there are those moments during that work that I go, oh, this is working. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's the orgasmic moment in it. I mean,
Yeah.
and it makes the fact that, you know, because, you know, I don't ever think that I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. That is a key.
I mean, if I'm music directing, I think I know what I'm doing. If I'm, you know, writing an arrangement, I know what I'm doing. You know, I think I know what I'm doing. But when it comes to creating music and lyrics, I'm always going, I don't know how the fuck I'm going to do this.
Yeah. You know who Sam Watson wrote a book on Bob Fosse, and he says Fosse's dancers acted like they knew they were dancing. They didn't dance. They kind of faked that they were dancing, or not fake is not that, you know, they played like they were dancing, you know. And so what does courage mean to you now?
Well, courage means different stuff to me now than it did earlier in my life. Since I'm nearer the end of my life, courage means working as hard as I fucking can to do as fucking much as I can before my time gets up.
Yeah.
So and that has made me a better artist. I mean, I'm a much better artist now as an older man than I was as a younger man, because I was trying to please people. I was trying to do what they wanted me to do.
Wow.
I just love artists like, you know, like those who knew in their 20s what they wanted to do, and just did it. And I have learned to be like that, but man, it was hard to get there.
Yeah, that's what I say about Zappa all the time is he over romanticized with this comedy. He says, I just write music for myself. If other people like it, then that's a bonus. It's like, yeah, right. You live in a capitalistic society. You know, if you hit these notes and sing these lyrics, you're going to sell, and then you're going to buy stuff so you can keep writing music.
Right.
But he did have that attitude that you like. The key is you don't, and you say work. I want to ask you next time, where'd you get your work ethic? And, work is not what you do with music. You don't go, okay, we're going to go work music. You go, we're going to go play music.
Well, that's performing. This is the other thing we should get into. I mean, we can't get into this deeply, but performing is a different thing for me. Performing is like water. If performing is my favorite thing to do, much more than actual writing, but the fruits of writing are better.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. Yeah, because and then the work ethic is funny because I always say, where'd you get your work ethic? And they always go, from my parents. And it's like, you ever look up work ethic in Wikipedia, about the third paragraph down, it says, this could be a scam from consumer culture.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I consider myself very lazy. And I'm lucky I've done.
Oh, that's why you live. That's why you're healthy and happy, Gary, is because if you're so driven, I mean, that's probably what killed Frank is he was a workaholic and he pushed too hard.
Cigarettes.
Yeah, cigarettes. Yeah. But have you seen this? I'm going to send you this one clip. It is the greatest Zappa clip ever. It's 1.5 minutes of him singing this song. It's called Keep It Greasy. And his singing his part in a Hollywood studio, and all you see is him in the microphone, and he goes, ugh, and then he laughs, and then the engineer, you hear him go, oh, could you do that again? I didn't get that. And he goes, you mean you didn't get me laughing? And he goes, no. He goes, oh, these Hollywood engineers. I laugh once. He goes, I laugh once a year. and he doesn't get it. If you listen to Joe's Garage, it's great because you hear Frank authentically laughing throughout.
Wow.
Then he really reveals a lot. He goes, well, I guess God didn't want it to be on tape then.
That's funny.
For a guy who's like, I don't believe in God, he says it. Well, God didn't want this.
Yep, I get it. That's funny.
All right, Gary, thank you so much. I'll send you some dates. We'll hook up.
Thank you. Where does this appear?
It's on YouTube. As soon as I hit end broadcast, it's boom on YouTube.
Oh, fantastic.
I'll send you the link. And I never read the comments. These guys wrote in and said, did you ever meet Sean McGowan? He just died.
Oh, Shane. Yeah, Shane.
Shane.
Yeah, I love that. I
know
it's
amazing.
So different an artist from me. It could not be more different.
Yeah.
But I love his stuff.
This guy, do you know him? Oswald Spengler. Do you know this guy?
No.
Anyways,
great name.
He said that Shane died on Oscar Wilde's death. And we both mentioned Oscar Wilde, in it. So that was cool. Thank you so much, Gary. I am honored and really learned a lot. And it was so fun. It was like a musical jam. And even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, I know this will never end and we'll keep talking forever and ever.
Thank you, my friend. Give my love to Susie.
Thank you.
Take care.